75 days until the 47th presidency. Donald Trump celebrating, Kamala Harris conceding, and Washington turns red. The balance of power from the Beltway and beyond. Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try, we have to try, and it's going to happen. Success will bring us together.
A no-doubter in the swing states and most everywhere you looked, really. Donald Trump winning the White House, Republicans flipping the Senate, and on the brink of keeping the House as well. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Forget days of possible confusion and counting. Today came the formalities. Vice President Kamala Harris calling Donald Trump to concede and congratulate. This afternoon, she spoke to her supporters and as the vice president to the nation as well.
I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people.
You saw it all here on NewsNation, and you saw it here first. As the Los Angeles Times reports today, quote, NewsNation is the first network to call the presidential race for Trump, thanks to Decision Desk HQ. All right, a look at the map tonight, and this is where America stands. Let me walk you through some of this right now. These are the shifts to the right. Can we go real quick to the broader map real quick, because I want to show you basically what's happening. If you have the whole map up here, you got a lot of blue. Thank you. A lot of blue up there in the Northeast. You got a lot of blue up here in the West Coast, and look at this all across the country. A bunch of red essentially in between from coast to coast. So what is part of the story here of what happened? All right, back to the other one, because I know we talk about the swing states all the time. I'll get to that in a second. But the part of the story here is the shift to the right, no matter where you look. I'm showing you the deepest of blue states here for a second. California, look at what happened. It moved 12 points from 2020 to 2024. Illinois, it moved 9 points. Again, in the same 4-year time period. Let's go over to New York, New Jersey. New York, it moved 11 points. New Jersey, it moved 11 points. So what we've seen in parts all across this country, the deepest of blue states, shifts to the right. Still blue, but shift to the right. All right, I want to take you to a couple other states that we hadn't really talked about. But look at what's going on in Florida and in Ohio. Remember 20 years ago, several races ago, you had to win Ohio, you had to win Florida, right? Okay, Ohio. It was Republican +8 in 2020, +11 now, double digits. Florida, would you look at that? +3 in 2020, +13 in 2024. Ohio and Florida, deep red states as we stand here tonight. All right, so what about those swing states, right? We talked about it all the time. I'm going to show you 3. This was the quote-unquote blue wall. This is what Donald Trump did in those states from 2020 until now. We'll go west to east here. Wisconsin, he went from 48.9 to 49.8. In Michigan, 47.9 to 49.7. Pennsylvania, 48.8, and he cracked 50. So slight movements, but the movements he needed across the Midwest to become the next president of the United States. Joining me now, Scott Tranter, Data Science Director at Decision Desk HQ, the man behind all the numbers. Brother, you guys got this one. You were on top of it.
We tried.
You tried. When you go out to dinner this weekend with your friends, you finally get some sleep, and your buddies say to you, hey, Scott, what happened? How did Donald Trump win? What's your answer?
He won the popular vote, and the popular vote translated to those margins that you showed up in the Rust Belt there. Those margins made it easy to call an election night because he was a clear winner, as opposed to Pennsylvania 4 years ago, where Joe Biden eked it out after 3 or 4 days of counting.
What about this map? I mean, when you look at it for a second, we focused at the swing states nonstop, but there is a clear shift in this country with this map, and that's what we saw on Election Day.
Yeah, I'm from California. Your California shift there, that is shocking to me in the sense that, look, Kamala Harris is going to win that state, but Republicans or new Republican voters are coming out, and they're going to carry the House for the Republicans out there, and we're seeing that in places like Illinois. We're seeing that in places like New Jersey. We're seeing a coalition shift, and it's being driven by Donald Trump.
All right, speaking of shift, let's go to income. There was a poll, Scott, with the Wall Street Journal like 2 weeks ago. 45% of the country makes under $100,000, and in that poll, 78% said that inflation went higher than their wages. And to me, that was a big red sign for the incumbent, no matter who the incumbent is. If you look at this, those who make under $50,000, those who make $50,000 to $100,000, basically, you basically have 51 to 47, call it. Scott, that's the popular vote.
Yeah.
That's how this shook out, and you got to wonder for Democrats. Democrats were the party that picked up that had the advantage with the six-figure voters, and how they speak to voters, how they speak to the country going forward.
Yeah, and you point out a red flag. It's a red flag we've been talking about for years. The number one issue for Americans is the economy. It's related to inflation, related to income. As you pointed out, Donald Trump, he leads in the two biggest categories where Americans fit, and those are the incomes. That 100K plus, that used to be the Mitt Romney wing of the party 12 years ago. Donald Trump completely changed that.
When I saw you this morning, I said, go grab a pillow. Did you grab a pillow or coffee?
For about an hour. We still got some Senate races to call,
still
House races.
House, you think goes Republican?
I do. I think the question is 220 to 225, somewhere in there.
All right. Scott Tranter, Data Science Director at DDHQ. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Leave you with a look at these numbers here real quick as I come on over to Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, of course, Donald Trump's chief of staff at one point in the White House. Hello, sir.
Hello.
Nice to see you, Mick.
Nice to be here. Were we just here this morning?
Yeah, we were here this morning.
We've been doing this a lot.
Let's re-rack a little bit of it. Donald Trump only had 4 White House chiefs of staff. Had 4.
Right.
Some might say that was a lot. You were one of them.
It's the same Obama had in his first term, but go ahead.
You were one of them. Yes. You know Donald Trump as well as anyone in this town.
A little bit.
Where's he going from here? Let's look forward. Where's he going from here?
He's going to what's important to him, all right? So he's going to have one legislative priority from the get-go and only one, and that is tax reform.
Okay.
The Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 is the Trump tax cuts, okay?
Right.
And it expires by its own terms in 2025. He wants those extended. That is priorities 1, 2, and 3 from a legislative standpoint, which means he has to work with that building behind us. But it's not the only thing he's going to be working with. He has to also focus on what I call the executive agenda, the other things that are critical to him.
Okay.
Number 1, immigration. Number 2, tariffs and trade. And number 3, and this is the secret sauce, this is the deregulatory agenda. And those 4 things together, I think, make up not only the first 100 days, but maybe the first 6 months, maybe the first year.
The American public believed by a majority, more than 50%, that mass deportations of illegal immigrants, they are for that. I noted that you said deportation will be a focus, but you don't think that will happen. Major deportations will happen right off the bat.
I think some people, especially in the press, had this idea of these gangs of federales going through the streets of America, rounding up people and deporting 10 million folks. I don't think you have to do that. I think what you have to do is send the message that if you're here illegally, we are going to find you, and when we do, you have to go home. I don't think you have to deport 10 million people in order to solve this problem, and I don't think they're going to end up deporting 10 million people. But once the word gets out that they're serious about this, that if you're here illegally, we will find you and you have to go, then the folks who are here decide to leave, and more importantly, I think, folks stop coming in.
Republicans control the Senate. Senate confirms cabinet positions.
Yes.
You were Senate confirmed at one point. You know how that goes. With the Senate margins that Donald Trump has, with the popular vote that he has, is he going to get whoever he wants essentially confirmed? What are the names that you're hearing?
There'll be some limitations. I don't think Bobby Kennedy Jr. can get confirmed.
You don't think so?
I do not think that's happening.
Do you think Trump is going to nominate him for a Senate confirmed position?
I don't think it makes a difference because there's enough flexibility in running an administration where you could have a non-Senate confirmed position sort of be, and it's an overused term, but a czar. You can put somebody sort of in charge of a subset of a part of the economy, et cetera, and make them a czar. And I think that's where Bobby Kennedy probably ends up, because I don't think he can get confirmed by the Senate. Then there's other folks who don't want to go through the Senate confirmation. Right. It's not easy.
Yeah,
number one.
You had no fun with it.
I had no fun with it. Yeah. And number 2, they do oftentimes make you sell a lot of your business investments. Elon Musk.
That's a plus, though, right? Because some of that, you get tax breaks on that?
You do, but Elon Musk is not selling SpaceX.
Right,
That's just not going to happen.
Okay.
So you find places that are non-Senate confirmed. But yes, it does make it easier to get your formal nominations that have to be Senate confirmed when you hold 52 to 55 seats.
What do you think Elon Musk's role is? What isn't?
I love this idea of putting him in charge of this Department of Government Efficiency. I love the acronym. Yeah, I know you do, too, because you're a Bitcoin or you're a crypto guy.
Crypto had a role in this election. I told you.
The last guy in charge of government restructuring was me, and I got my teeth kicked in by Congress. And I'd love to see Elon Musk give it a try, and I'd love to see him be successful at it.
Will he?
I think he's got a chance. Okay. Look, it's really hard to fight City Hall, and it's really hard to fight a Congress that doesn't want to give up control over money. And that's what you're doing when you're fighting the bureaucracy in this town. But listen, if anybody could do it, I didn't think he could land rockets.
Right. He's got the helicopter on Mars, right? Taking pictures.
I wish him. I hope he's successful.
Thank you, sir. Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. All right. Still to come here on the Hill. It was one of the biggest issues driving the election: immigration. So what is next for the border? Now that Donald Trump is president-elect, we are live from the southern border. Plus, what will happen to all of Trump's legal cases once he's back in the White House? Did you see what the New York Attorney General said today as well, by the way? And we were just talking about it. Elon Musk. What's he doing next? I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Welcome to Washington, the center of it all in politics. We're back and forth. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. In President-elect Donald Trump's victory speech early this morning, he once again made the promise that he will seal and secure the southern border. But how might he do it this time around? Here was the president-elect in the early morning hours.
We're going to have to seal up those borders, and we're going to have to let people come into our country. We want people to come back in, but we have to let them come back in, but they have to come in legally.
The best in the business covering the southwest border is our Allie Bradley, and she joins us live once again in Arizona this evening. Allie?
Yeah, hey, Blake. So it looks like America wants to go back to some familiar policies under now President-elect Trump, and he's promising that mass deportation. That is one of the biggest things that he campaigned on. But how exactly is this going to play out? What is this going to look like on day one? So what he's going to be doing is going after the 1.5 million people in our country who already have a final order of removal. These are people who have gone through some kind of process, and a judge has said, you don't qualify for asylum, so you got to go. But the thing is, in America, when you get a final order of removal, Blake, it's pretty much like Scout's honor. You got to go on your own accord, and a lot of these people didn't leave. So ICE is going to have to go and find these people and remove them. And then we also have the issue of criminals that DHS has also identified in the United States, whether they are walking around in the U.S. or they're in local jurisdictions, whether that's a sheriff's office or a local police department in jail. So those people are the ones that he's likely going to target first. He's talked about that very openly. Now, when it comes to these other individuals, millions of others poured in. They have notices to appear, so they do have a right to due process. His vice president-elect, J.D. Vance, says that he supports the president in using executive action to get rid of that due process, basically overrule that and say, nope, you don't get that court process anymore, that 2 to 6 year court date. We're not going to honor that. So that is something that we can expect. Now, we also expect the president-elect to actually remove protective status for some of these individuals. We know migrants from Haiti living in Ohio. That is something that he has fixated on, and he says he will remove those individuals and will do it by removing that status. Now, something else, Blake, we're going to see him trying to work with Mexico, trying to re-implement the stay in Mexico, remain in Mexico policy, which makes people sit in Mexico while their asylum cases are adjudicated. But again, that will take that coordination with Mexico. So those are some things that we do expect to see. Blake, we're in Arizona right now. We're going to be visiting 2 sectors in the next 2 days. So 3 sectors within 3 days, eyes on the ground, seeing what's happening, because a lot of people are expecting a surge, kind of that get in before Trump does idea. So we'll be watching. Blake.
Our Allie Bradley, live for us in Arizona once again. Allie, thank you. All right, so what about that? What could Donald Trump potentially do next on immigration and the wide range of foreign policy issues that are before him? Morgan Ortagus is the former State Department spokeswoman in the Trump administration, friend of the show, joins us live here on the Hill. Hello, Morgan. Thanks for being back. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Good to be back. It's a good day.
You got it. Yeah, busy day. So let's start with immigration. You just heard Ali there. You were the spokesperson at the State Department for the Trump administration. Where do you think Donald Trump goes first, and what do you think he keys in on with immigration?
Well, Ali covered it really comprehensively, actually. And the several times that I've been to the southern border in the past year, Ali has come by and covered the event as well. And so I think she was right on the money about the various policies that you could likely expect President Trump to enact. I think the better way to look at it is sort of, you could go through individual policies, but there's a couple of key indicators of where the president is going as it relates towards immigration. One, who does he pick for DHS secretary? That person will obviously have to, as Alexandra Mayorkas has done, have to answer some very tough questions from Capitol Hill. But there's a lot of people like Chad Wolf and others who have a lot of experience there. But what's really important about the southern border, we know that he's going to want to try to finish the wall. We know things like, I would say likely things like the CBP1 app, which essentially just lets people into the country. That's why we had less people at the southern border, because they were just going on the app and getting a court date. If you're circumventing the legal process, whatever the policy is, I think you can likely expect a second Trump term to not allow policies that's actually circumventing the law.
Morgan, let me show you the map here worldwide. You know this, but for our viewers here on NewsNation or those listening to us on SiriusXM, whoever was going to win the presidency, this was before them, whether they want it or not. There's the war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, in the Middle East, Israel and Hezbollah, Israel fighting against, pushing back against Hamas, the war there. You've been talking about this, Morgan, more than anyone I know. The Houthis in Yemen, and they continue to fire off rockets. Iran, right, which is the main player in all of this. ISIS-K, we've talked about this before, the resurgence there in the Middle East. A possible invasion from China of Taiwan, and we haven't even talked about North Korea yet. And that's just some of it. That's some of the lay of the land. What do you think, when you look at this map, what do you see, and how do you think Donald Trump views it?
Well, certainly there's a lot of fires burning around the world that you're going to have to deal with. President Biden, there's one president at a time. He's still there until January 20th. So you sort of have to start to see how the world shapes up as President Trump gets closer. Listen, the Middle East is, there's so much on fire, and you just named it. I would say there's two big things that I'm looking at right now, and that's Iran and China. So why Iran? Iran has done something totally unprecedented, which is they've tried to kill the Republican nominee for president, and now the man who will be the 47th president of the United States. They funded anti-Semitic protests around the country. They've been interfering in our election at an unprecedented scales. They did everything that everyone thought Russia wanted to do. They did that and basically put it on fire. So there's a lot of countries, China, Russia, Iran, who need to be held accountable for the election interference they did this year. But it is beyond the pale that a foreign hostile state has tried to kill the current nominee and his former cabinet. That has to be dealt with. Similarly, as it relates to China, according to Josh Rogin from the Washington Post, the Biden administration has known about the most comprehensive cyber attack by the Chinese Communist Party that affected, reportedly, again, according to the Post, Donald Trump and so many of his top, et cetera. The Biden administration has known about this since August. It didn't become public until last week, 1 week before the election. So China has to be held accountable for this. If you go through and start to read what the Washington Post details, again, this is what we only know publicly, but intelligence community members from the Senate intelligence community from both sides of the aisle are raising the alarm and saying this is basically the worst cyber attack that they've seen. So China also has tried to interfere in our election and is trying to take provocative moves towards us. Again, that has to be dealt with. The fact that this has gone on since August and has gone unanswered by the Biden team is inappropriate.
Morgan, we could go nation by nation, area by area, but gotta leave it there. Again, just some of, you don't, presidents don't get to choose many of the issues. They get to choose some, but not all of them, right? And the reality is, as you know, Morgan, this is what is before Donald Trump, we believe, at least standing here 75 days from now. I got to leave it there. Morgan, great to see you as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake.
You got it. All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill. Republicans fresh off a White House win with Trump. The former chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel, joins us here on the Hill about what they can expect in the next couple months as the transition here begins. And did the world's richest man just get even wealthier with the Trump victory? How his big bet might have just paid off. You're watching The Hill. Stay with us. We're back in a few. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. President-elect Donald Trump continues to celebrate his victory on this day. Trump continues to remain in Mar-a-Lago at his property there in Palm Beach, Florida. And that is where we find our Robert Sherman this evening, who is once again live for us in Florida. You know, Robert, it's fascinating because we've talked about the campaign for so long, and we talked about the possibility of we might not know who's the president-elect for maybe days, who knows? But it came, and it's here, and now really the focus is, in 75 days, he's the next president of the United States, and this is the transition, and now a lot of big decisions have to be made.
Yeah, I mean, the timetable here is pretty remarkable, Blake. I mean, you think about it, it was 2 years ago this month that the former president announced that he had the intention of running for the White House. That is a long campaign by presidential standards. And then it wasn't until earlier this morning that he knew that he had secured the 270 electoral votes necessary in order to send him to the White House. And the message that he has given his supporters here is that he believes that there is a tall task in front of them and that there's a lot of work that must be done in the coming days and weeks, but he's promising it will yield better days ahead. This is what he had to say. Take a listen.
Every single day I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America. This will truly be the golden age of America. This is a magnificent victory for the American people.
And for the former president, now president-elect, having a couple of key phone call conversations, one of them with Vice President Kamala Harris, the other with President Biden, and which we just heard from Mr. Trump a short while ago, in which he said that President Biden has invited him to Washington in order to have a smooth transition of power, and that meeting will be taking place soon. But a couple other phone calls to note, those with heads of state, the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, as Team Trump focuses on shifting towards Inauguration Day and the look ahead to the future. Blake?
Yeah, Robert, have you gotten any indications? We had Caroline Leavitt, spokesperson for the campaign on Morning in America, earlier this morning when I was joining Marky Martin, and I asked about the transition, and Caroline was like, look, we just won. It was just the morning. And that's a fair response, right, to be honest. But have you gotten a sense as to when they sort of make that shift?
It seems as though that it's all going to start to come into focus soon here, Blake, because, again, I mean, there is this feeling that when you've talked to the folks with the Trump campaign, that they want to hit the ground running as quickly as possible once January comes. That's something that they want to be even better on compared to where they were in 2016. Right. And you hear a lot of these names that have been floated around, names such as Burgum and Ramaswamy, but in terms of who that would be, all still remains to be seen.
Get ready for it, Robert. Our Robert Sherman, live for us in Florida tonight. Robert, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so one big question going forward now is what will happen with the legal cases that the president-elect is facing. 2 are federal cases where he's charged with conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election, and separately with illegally retaining classified materials. That one has been dropped but is being appealed. The 2 other cases in New York State, for where he's been convicted of falsifying business records. He's scheduled to be sentenced later this month. And the Georgia case, where he's been charged with conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. New York's Attorney General Letitia James made this vow today. Watch.
We did not expect this result, but we are prepared to respond to this result. It is my job to protect and defend the rights of New Yorkers and the rule of law. And I will not shrink from that responsibility.
NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber, NewsNation political contributor Scott Bolden join me now. Hello to you both. Thank you for being here. Jesse, I'm listening to that. We did not expect this result, but we'll respond. Is she a politician or the attorney general? I hear that and I'm like, what is going on there in New York?
It is, aside from the fact it's hard to know exactly what she's talking about, you can't have a more inappropriate statement from the top government attorney in the state of New York. This directly undermines her objectivity. This undermines any future legal arguments she would make. This preemptive attack, we're going to be ready for whatever Donald Trump throws at us. This is what she has been doing from the very beginning. This is why every legal action she has taken there's been a shadow cast around it. And to say this, there's rules in place for prosecutors and attorney generals about making out-of-court statements like this. They're not supposed to do it. And it's very, very inappropriate. So, she clearly is not happy Donald Trump won. But to make this comment right after he is elected, from a political and legal point of view, I could not be more upset and disgusted by it. I'm just honest about it.
Can you defend her at all?
Well, I could add a supplement.
Hesitation there.
No. I can add a supplement to what Jesse said.
Okay.
She doesn't have any criminal authority. She's not criminally prosecuting him. She's the attorney general. So these are all civil prosecutions. So, but an attorney general is a politician. Although Jesse's right, there are ethical rules in place that she may have touched on. We'll see. We can criticize her.
Okay.
But she's trying to collect $400 million or whatever the amount is.
Jesse, I'll give you the federal. Scott, stay with me on the state. What happens to the state cases? Because Trump is scheduled to be sentenced later this month.
So in Georgia, the case is up on appeal regarding whether the prosecutor stays in place or not based on alleged unethical conduct. Right. If the Court of Appeals removes her and she doesn't appeal it to the Supreme Court, then what happens is it goes to a committee of lawyers appointed by the state, and they decide whether to go forward and who would go forward with it.
Sounds very legal. And in New York, Marshawn's going to do what, the judge?
Marshawn is either going to put it off until after, delay sentencing until after Trump does his 4 years, or he could sentence him on the 18th for incarceration, suspended, give him a fine, and then it goes away.
Jesse, the federal cases are all but done?
Those things are done. And it seems like Jack Smith is not even waiting for Donald Trump to take office where he might be fired. They're basically trying to wrap it up. By the regulations, he has to have the approval of Merrick Garland to do this. And it seems maybe the last step is he would prepare a report for Merrick Garland. The public would see it. I don't know if we would learn anything more than we already know. But these cases are already wrapped up because we know there's a DOJ policy that you can't indict and prosecute a sitting president because that would interfere with their ability to actually do their job. So those cases are completely done.
All right, Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Thank you, sir. Scott, stand by for the rest of the hour. Appreciate it. All right, joining us now here on the Hill is the former chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel. Excuse me. Ronna, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time.
I mean, it's so exciting for Republicans. I said to somebody today, well, one, it's a referendum on the Democrats. I mean, not just in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, but also look at New Jersey, look at Illinois. I mean, Democrats did poorly.
I went through this. There's been a big shift. Yep, big shift to the right.
It's a referendum, but I also view it a little bit like the red wave we missed in 2022. And I think Dobbs halted it, and it came this year.
So let me ask you about that, because you were pretty vocal, Ronna, in 22 after Donald Trump and the party really downplayed early voting. Here's what you said. You said, I've said this over and over again. There were many in 2020 saying, don't vote by mail, don't vote early, and we have to stop that. I was just looking at the early voting totals, Ronna. You basically had 86 million people vote early out of 140 million in total. That's about, give or take, we'll see how it all shakes out, about 60% of the country voting early. Do you think Republicans, do you think Donald Trump learned their lesson?
Yeah, it was so critical that President Trump, he spoke out on this. I mean, there's no better person that's going to get voters to change their habits, to believe in it, than President Trump. You know, the RNC, I was there earlier this year. We launched a Bank Your Vote initiative in every state. We were going to county parties. We were creating Bank Your Vote captains. This is certainly something that took an education, but it wouldn't have happened without the top of the ticket saying it. This has to be the norm going forward. We can't expect to get everything on Election Day.
Speaking of the RNC, your predecessor, Reince Priebus, after Donald Trump won in 2016, Reince went to the White House with Donald Trump. You would think that some folks at the RNC would go with Donald Trump to the White House. You know them. You know that organization inside and out. Who do you think Trump should bring with him to 1600 Pennsylvania?
Oh, I'm not even going to get into that. I think he's...
Oh, come on, give me a name. Who do you think... Do you think Laura Trump goes with him? Michael Whatley?
Yeah, Michael's great. I think there's going to be a lot of people on that very long list for President Trump of very capable people that he's going to bring in. But the difference between 2016 and 2020 is he knows how Washington works. He is going to get in there, and on day one, he is going to start doing things and getting to work, and he's going to put a team in there. I know Howard Lutnick very well, who's running the transition for him. Howard has assembled a phenomenal group of people, and I'll be excited to see what happens. But it was a great night for Republicans. Obviously, we're still waiting for the House, a referendum on the Democrats who have gone so crazy, and now the Republicans have control again.
Ronna, let me leave you with where you started. Here was Donald Trump last night, now the president-elect, on unity. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Sure.
It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite, and we're going to try. We have to try, and it's going to happen. Success will bring us together.
So he's talking about unity there, and that's really the responsible thing for both sides to say at this point, both leaders on both sides. But the reality is, if the House holds like we think it will, Donald Trump has a mandate. And what he believes is he has a significant mandate. So how do you balance, we're going to be unifying with, you know how Washington works, Ronna. Republicans are going to come in here and they're going to try to carry out Trump's mandate.
Well, I do think he's talking about things that do have bipartisan support, like a border that we need safe and secure, like making sure that we tackle our energy independence. I mean, I think there's so much bipartisanship in Washington, and I believe President Trump will work across the aisle. I'll just give you one example. I had some Democrat family members call me today, and they were thrilled about the stock market. They're like, Donald Trump might actually be great for my pocketbook. So there's some unity and success like he's talking about. I am so excited about the team he's looking to bring in. And of course, the Senate wins and then keeping the House will give us an opportunity to make lives better for the American people. And that's ultimately what it's about.
To be fair, though, the stock market has gone up and to the right for basically the last 15 years, no matter who's been in the White House. But I do appreciate the sentiment you bringing in from the other side.
You know those doomsdayer family members who are like, oh, if the other guy wins, it's going to tank. And that did not happen today. So he's going to have good economic policy. He's going to have a good team. It was a great night for Republicans. It was a referendum. Democrats are on the wrong track for this country.
Ronna McDaniel, got to leave it there, former chairwoman of the RNC. Thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. All right, still to come here on the Hill, Elon Musk. What's going on with him going forward? Did you see what happened with Tesla today, by the way, speaking of money in the market? Wow. Elon, Trump, and the next 75 days. You're watching The Hill here on NewsNation.
NewsNation is the first network to project with our partners Decision Desk HQ that Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States.
As America's biggest story continues to unfold, trust NewsNation to tell it with respect for all Americans.
We have told them they should be broadcasting NewsNation.
This is the biggest call of the night. No one has been close to NewsNation because of DDHQ. This was an historic night.
No matter who you voted for, NewsNation is news for all America.
It is just after 1:22 in the morning Eastern Time, and this is the biggest call of the night. Decision Desk HQ can now project that former President Donald Trump will be our next president, the 47th president of the United States.
All right, so that was the moment last night when Decision Desk HQ made the official call that Donald Trump had won the 2024 presidential election. The president-elect is on track to win 312 electoral college votes, including all 7 swing states, along with the popular vote. Now, many of the narratives and the coverage of the campaign from some of the legacy media institutions are now being called into question. 2 of Trump's more prominent supporters, Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, calling that out on Rogan's podcast, which is the most listened to in this country. Watch.
They'll take like not even a full sentence, like a half a sentence from Trump, and then they'll push it on every ad, every speaking event, every
and it gets
media.
repeated on the news.
Full panel here with me now. Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor. Denise Gitsham, NewsNation political contributor as well. Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation political contributor. The theme here, Kurt Bardella, NewsNation political contributor. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in on a busy day. This story, I'll give you one example. Bloodbath, right? There was the bloodbath comment, and they ran wild with bloodbath. Donald Trump was talking about if Chinese EVs come into the United States, there would be a bloodbath for the auto market. And if you believe that actions speak louder than words, you know who agrees with him? Joe Biden. Because Joe Biden just put 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs coming into the country. And I think, Denise, that's just one example here.
Oh, that's one of many examples. We could go through, listen, the legacy media has done more harm to the Democratic administrations and all the echo chambers of people who agree with them than any other entity. And this is why, and Americans know it, this is why trust in those legacy media outlets is actually at a historic low of 31%. We know that they're actually not there to give us facts and help us decide. They're actually there to tell us what we should believe and masquerade their opinions as facts.
Democrats have a lot of soul searching today. Are you there with Denise?
Well, I think the interesting thing about this campaign was it's really the first presidential campaign where the legacy media more or less was actually on the sidelines, where both campaigns bypassed the traditional media structures to go directly to what they perceived to be their voters, whether it was through Call Her By Her Name podcast for Kamala Harris, whether it was Joe Rogan, Elon Musk for Donald Trump. I think what we've realized is the voters, they absorb information and news in different ways, in different spaces, and it's not through.
But I think some folks also saw what played out on some of these networks, how it played out, and they didn't really get fooled.
You forget, I used to work at one of those places. And I want to tell you, it was really nice being here last night because you got a sense that we just want to know what the facts were. We want to know what was happening. I was at one of the other networks. I was at CBS during the midterms in 2022. And when they announced a Democrat swing district House race, there was wild applause in the studio. And it was clear who these folks were working for, rooting for, and that flowed through to all of the work that they did.
You're not saying that somehow they were misreporting.
Absolutely, I am.
You may have not liked the way they were reporting, but they were reporting, and they're free to clap and do whatever they want to do.
There were times when they printed stuff.
There gives media something to report on every day.
There were times when they put out material that was intentionally misleading. I pointed it out to them, and they refused to change it.
I don't want to call out one single. One single entity here? No, I know, but it's just, I think folks sort of folks saw it, right? And you could take your opinion from it, and it's one of the reasons.
And it undermines,
to your point, why
Denise says it,
love doing what we do here.
It hurts the Democrat Party. It hurts the country. You need a media that can look at.
Fox News a lot about the election got sold for $1 billion.
I want to move on. That's a problem. I want to move on real quick to what I thought was potentially the soundbite of the year. This is Jamie Dimon in Davos, which is a big elite meeting in January. Here's what he said.
I wish the Democrats would think a little more carefully when they talk about MAGA, but I don't think they're voting for Trump because of his family values. Now, if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked. He was right about some of China. I don't like what he did.
No, I said China virus.
Yeah, I understand. He may have been right. And I don't like how he said things about Mexico. But he wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues. And that's why they're voting for him.
Did he nail the election, Scott, in January?
Did he nail it? I disagree with what Jamie Dimon said about Donald Trump. I mean, how he says it, his personality and his character are not the most liked. And if he's right about the policy, then why doesn't he just stick to the policy then?
But it's the indictment of people who vote for Trump, which is the problem that Hillary Clinton fell into with the basket of deplorables comment. And
people who vote for Donald Trump they would vote against their economic and personal interests.
That's not what they're saying. That's not what they're saying.
Well, they maybe not, but they do vote against their political interests.
There is a sense from people who vote for Donald Trump that we are evil or dumb if we don't agree with some legacy poobah's like opinion about something that is not rooted in anything but their own echo chamber of beliefs.
Well, if you don't engage in human decency and you say obnoxious thing and crass and racist and sexist,
well, see, there you go. I pulled it out of him. Well, I knew you would eventually come true. I knew you would eventually say what you really felt about the people who vote for Trump. But that's what you're associating with people who voted for Trump.
You think you need to move past that?
Yes, because clearly it didn't work. I mean, at the end of the day, the result speaks for itself. At the end of the day, elections are about trying to convince people, some who may disagree with you on some things, that you are still welcome in their party. You still are a big tent party. The Democratic Party's problem right now is too many voters across this country don't feel like they're welcome in the Democratic Party if they disagree with them on one or two things.
I got 30 seconds left here, Mick. I got 30 seconds left here. We've been talking about Elon Musk and what he can do in the government. You know the government inside and out better than anyone. What can he do?
I don't know. No one is going to chafe under the rules and restrictions for government service more than Elon Musk. It's a square peg in a round hole, but he's an extraordinarily capable person. I'd be curious to see how he's...
The problem is he's a government contractor. And if you put him in the head of a commission that goes through regulations agency by agency, he's going to be evaluating agencies that have control and oversight over him.
2,000 rules.
Conflict, he can't do it.
It's one of the...
You can't waive it.
Well, you have to divest from it, and that's one of the things
and he's not divesting.
He's too big to regulate. He is too big to regulate.
Here's the thing.
No,
we'll see where this goes over the next 75 days, because 75 days from now is Inauguration Day. And from here to then, Donald Trump has a lot of decisions to make. Thank y'all. Appreciate it. We'll be here for forever. Yeah. No, it's not it. Other side of the break, Leland Vitter, host of On Balance. You're watching The Hill.
And another thing.
Welcome back here to The Hill on News Nation. Donald Trump is the president-elect for a second time, and the GOP will gain control of the Senate. The United States House of Representatives also looks likely to remain controlled by Republicans. Joining me now, host of On Balance, Leland Vitter. Leland, you know, there's a lot of fascinating storylines, obviously, but one of them is who's going to end up leading Republicans in the Senate as Mitch McConnell takes a back seat. And you're talking to one of the biggest players that there are in the Senate tonight on your show.
John Thune, senator of South Dakota, one of the two Johns, either John or John Cornyn, possible as majority leader. We asked him about the filibuster. And remember, Kamala Harris said that there were things worth breaking the filibuster for.
Yep, she did,
Yeah, we'll talk to him about that and see exactly if Republicans think turnaround's fair play.
Was it coffee or pillow for you?
Coffee? Lots of coffee.
Lots of coffee. It was a late night. You did a great job last night, my man.
And you were up
coverage.
early. I've been
I've been up late. I've been up early. All of it. It's been around the clock.
All right.
We got to leave it there.